This is Jamie Romero with Learn by the Byte. Welcome to Learn to Program with Java. Hello folks, this is Jamie Romero with Learn by the Byte, and I wanted to let you know a little bit about what's covered in this course in Learn to Program with Java Part 2. So first of all, if you haven't taken Part 1 of the series, that's step 1. So before you move on to Part 2, make sure you take the first part. In that part, we're going to talk about things like variables and data types and expressions. We'll talk about the compiler, talk about bits and bytes, and all the stuff that you need to know, just the foundational stuff before you move on here to this Part 2 course. And so, but assuming that we've already done that, let's talk about what is in this second course. First of all, over 125 videos, over 10 hours of content. So there's a lot of material here to look at. Actually, I think it's even over 11 hours of content now. The first thing we'll do, this course overview, we've already done it, or we're already doing it right now. There's some course setup. Again, if you already did Part 1, then you can skip the course setup. It's the same thing as what you saw in Part 1 of this course. But from there, we're going to talk about decision making. So we'll talk about if statements. So this is something that you do in basically all of your Java programs. Like 99% of the programs you write, you're going to put in some if statements. You're going to be making some decisions. We'll also look at switch statements, which are an alternative to if statements. And for every one of our chapters, we'll have an example, a little bit of a bigger example that we'll encourage you to work through on your own. You'll also have review questions that will ask you to challenge yourself to see if you remember the content of the lecture. And of course, exercises, labs. So every chapter, you're going to be expected to work on your keyboard and type in some Java code. See if you really understood what we talked about. I won't leave you high and dry, though. I'm going to review all of the exercises. So for example, in section 2, there are 6 exercises. And for each one of those, all step by step, type in the solution to the exercise. I, of course, would like you to work on it on your own first, but if you want to see how I did it, by all means, that's why they're there. Every one of our sections also, or most every one of them, also has a build-upon project that you're going to be working on. A little employee project. Eventually, you're going to be adding and removing employees, saving them off to files. It's quite good. It's going to be something that's optional, but something worth looking into and adding that extra time in to have this build upon thing. Have something you can be proud of when you finished up this set of videos. Okay, so that's section 2. Section 3, we're going to cover looping. So looping, we're talking about for loops, while loops, do loops, repeating statements over and over again. We'll talk about iterative loops. We'll talk about conditional loops, infinite loops, loops that appear not to end until you do what we call a break statement to jump out of them. Like before, we have a little example, something that we want you to run on your own. We have review questions. We have labs. And the labs this time, boy, there's a bunch of reviews here. So we have at least 9 labs, it looks like, plus that employee project you're going to add to. So lots of good exercises there in that section. Section 4, we talk about methods. A method is how we group together code. We can have something well named that you can call over and over again. If you've done any kind of other programming, you might hear of that as a function in other languages or a procedure. So we'll talk about how you can create a method, how you can pass data to it via parameters, how you can get return values back from a method. And we'll do yet another example, computing square and square root via methods. Review questions, exercises. Again, it looks like 6 labs, 6 exercises for that chapter. Section 5, a little bit shorter. It's on debugging. So debugging is taking a program and figuring out what's wrong with it if it's not running properly. So we'll talk about a few basic ways to debug, things like print statements and stuff like that. But we'll have a little extra bonus material where we're going to talk about Eclipse. So I'll show you how to download and install Eclipse, tell you how to create an Eclipse project, and how to use the Eclipse debugger. The whole course doesn't rely on Eclipse, but at that point, if you wanted to maybe start using that for the rest, that's fine. I'll probably stick to a simple editor for the whole thing, though. So simple labs and review questions for Section 5. Section 6, we're getting some pretty serious programs now. We're going to talk about arrays. Arrays are how we can group together lots of data in one variable. all the data is going to be of the same data type when it comes to arrays. So we'll talk about arrays, we'll have an example, we'll have review questions. Again, lots of labs. It looks like there's 4 exercises, but as far as I can tell, lab 4 is pretty good size because we have lots of review videos. So that one in and of itself has many, many parts to it. Similar to arrays, we have something called classes. Classes also allow us to store data in a single variable, but the data doesn't have to be the same type. This is somewhere where we have to be very careful, and I will be in the videos. There's a lot more you can do with classes. Once you start learning about object-oriented programming, boy, you can add methods to these, you can add constructors. It can be very, very interesting. But we're still assuming you're learning to program, so we're going to kind of take it easy, just use a class as a data collection. As usual, nice example, review questions, again, exercises. Looks like 4 exercises, and also we'll revisit the employee project. And that thing's going to be pretty good size. We're going to have 4 parts to that project you're working through. Finally, we have section 8, which deals with working with files. This one's kind of an optional section, I suppose. It's going a little more advanced. We're talking about reading files, writing files. We're talking about text files versus binary files. Again, we'll have a nice example. We'll have some review questions and some labs. We'll have 3 exercises, but we'll also have, again, more work on that employee project. We'll finish it up. We'll be able to add and remove employees, list employees, and also save them off to files. So great stuff in this course. If all you've done is part 1, by all means, part 2 is going to be interesting because if statements, for loops, methods, these are the kinds of things you're going to do every day when you're a programmer. Of course, we'll have the course summary at the end. So that's the basics of what we're going to be seeing here in this course. I probably should review the requirements. What are the requirements? Well, we expect that you've done part 1. And the requirements for part 1 is you have to know how to type, and you have to be basic fluency with your computer. You know how to create files, things like that. Who's the target audience? This is a course for beginners. If you've been doing some programming before, you might want to go look at our other courses called Introduction to Java Programming. That course goes deeper into Java. It assumes a little bit more. But if you're a beginner, if you're just learning to program, start with part 1 of this course, and then swing over and visit part 2, and then you'll see more. You'll see, as we just mentioned, things like, well, let's see, what are we going to get from this course? By the end of the course, you'll be able to use if and switch statements to make decisions in your programs. You'll be able to write programs that use loops to perform repetitive tasks. Remember, so ifs and switch, that's section 2. Loops was section 3. You'll be able to design and write procedural programs using methods. So we're going to modularize our code using methods. You'll be able to use basic debug techniques. And we'll even show you how to use Eclipse to solve programming problems, increase your program quality. You'll be able to use arrays and classes to manage your data. Arrays if the data is the same type, classes if they're different types. And as we saw the last section, you'll be able to write programs that use files to store and retrieve data. So I apologize if that last little part was a little repetitive, but we do want to make sure that the objectives are clear. You know what you're going to get out of this course. Anyhow, that's probably good enough for an overview of what we're going to see. This is the part 2 of Learn to Program with Java. So if you want to kind of stick with me, maybe go on and double check your setup. If you did part 1, your setup should be fine. But if you want to double check, feel free. That's in the upcoming videos. And before you know it, you'll jump right into section 2 and start doing some decision making.